What happens when a nurse's courage challenges a system rooted in prejudice? St. Mary's General Hospital, a symbol of medical excellence in a sufficient suburban community, was about to face an unexpected challenge. Angela Parker, a talented black nurse, joined the team, not knowing that she would find deeply rooted prejudice. As tensions increased and conflicts intensified, a seemingly common patient named Thomas Edwards watched silent from his hospital bed. But Mr. Edwards was not just any patient, and his presence was about to change everything. What hidden power did this mysterious patient possess? And how could a nurse's struggle become the catalyst for an institutional change? Let's find out. The shine walls of St. Mary's General Hospital shone under the fluorescent lights, while Angela Parker took their first steps inside the site. The air was impregnated with disinfectant smell and an underlying tension that made its stomach turn. Despite the nervousness, Angela straightened her back and lifted her chin, determined to make a good first impression. As he approached the nursing station, he noticed the sudden silence that fell over the place. The conversations diminished to whispers, and the eyes turned away, as if they feared eye contact. She swallowed hard, repressing the familiar sensation of isolation that threatened to master her. "Excuse me," Angela said, her firm voice despite her nerves. "Sue Angela Parker, our Nova nurse. Could you direct myself to the nursing boss's office?" A blonde nurse looked up, her blue eyes shine slightly before a rehearsed smile spreads down her face. "Of course," he replied, his polite but cold tone. "By the passage, third door on the right." Angela felt her and followed the hall, aware of the eyes that accompanied her. The sound of his sensible shoes echoed in silence, each step sounding like thunder in an abnormally quiet space. As he approached the office, a tall and distinct man dressed in a white coat, he left a nearby room. His gray hair and authoritarian posture identified him as a senior doctor. Angela's heart accelerated with hope. Perhaps this was your chance to make a positive connection. "Good morning, doctor," she said, offering a warm smile. "I'm Angela Parker, the new nurse starting today. It is a pleasure to meet you." The doctor's gray eyes examined her, her face impassive. "Dr. William Greaves," answered shortly. "I trust you were properly oriented on our protocols." Before Angela could answer, Dr. Greaves continued, "We keep very high patterns here at St. Mary's. I hope you are prepared to serve them." Without waiting for an answer, he passed her, leaving Angela alone in the hallway, his extended hand slowly falling beside him. The interaction made her discouraged, but Angela refuses to let it go up. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and knocked on the nursing boss's door. While waiting for an answer, Angela's mind wandered for her days at the nursing college, her mother's words echoing in her ears. "Honey, you'll have to fight double that everyone else, but never let you see you sweat. You come from a long line of strong women, and you have that same strength within you." Angela remembered the long nights of study, the overtime in the laboratory, and the constant feeling of having to prove her value. He recalled the subtle contempt of some teachers, the eyebrows raised when she took high grades, and the whispered comments from his colleagues, wondering if she actually belonged there. But even so, Angela persevered, graduating at the top of her class. Her determination and skills silenced even the most severe critics. Now standing in the St. Mary's corridors, Angela has found strength in these memories. She had overcome obstacles before and knew she would do it again. The door opened, revealing a middle-aged woman with a severe expression. "Miss Parker, I assume," she said, her sharp tone. "Enter. We have a lot to cover. I hope you can follow." As Angela followed the nursing head to the office, she couldn't get rid of the feeling that she was going into something bigger than just a new job. The air in the hospital seemed loaded with latent tension, a silent storm forming under the surface of professional smiles and stereo efficiency. Little did Angela know that her presence would soon become the catalyst for changes in street corridors, challenging rooted prejudices and exposing the toxic culture that hid behind her prestigious facade. The rest of the first day of Angela spent a whirlwind of guidelines, presentations, and a mountain of papers. When traveling through the hospital, he could not fail to notice the subtle ways in which he was excluded. The conversations were silent as he approached, just to start over in the whispered tone once he passed. His attempts to maintain informal conversations with nurses were greeted with polite but distant answers, leaving the feeling of being an outsider in an environment that should be collaborative. When his shift ended, Angela was mentally and emotionally exhausted. By gathering his things in his closet, he heard two nurses talking in whispers around the corner. "Did you see the new hiring?" he whispered one. "Yes, I don't know what they were thinking," he said. "This is not exactly the neighborhood for—" Angela's hand froze at the cabinet door, her heart sinking. She hoped that the initial coldness would be only the nervousness of the first day, but now the reality of her situation was becoming painfully clear. This was not just a new job, it would be a daily battle against prejudices and prejudices. Upon leaving the hospital, the weight of the day pressed his shoulders. Angela went to the bus stop, only a storm of emotions. The excitement he will feel in the morning had been replaced by a growing sense of doubt and isolation. Sitting on the hard plastic bank, she pulled her phone and dialed a familiar number. After 2 touches, a warm, comforting voice answered. "Hi, honey. How was your first day?" Hearing his mother's voice, tears began to form in Angela's eyes. She took a deep breath, determined not to collapse in public. "It was challenging, Mom," she said, her voice badly above a whisper. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before his mother spoke again, his voice full of understanding and strength. "Angela Marie Parker, do you listen to me? You work too hard to let someone make you feel less. Remember who you are and where you came from. You are not just there for yourself. You are there for every Black girl who dreams of being in these corridors one day." Angela closed her eyes, allowing her mother's words to envelop her. "It's just that I didn't expect it to be so difficult." "Nothing worth doing is easy," answered your mother, "but you have the strength of generations behind you. Keep your head up, do your job better than anyone, and don't let you see you hesitate. Did you hear?" "Yes, Mom," said Angela, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "I heard." At the end of the call, Angela noticed an elegant black Mercedes slow down as she passed the bus stop. Through the dark windows, she glimpsed Dr. Giavi's, her eyes fixed on her for a moment before the car accelerated. Angela straightened, her mother's words echoing in her mind. She could be facing a difficult battle, but she was far from being alone. With the strength of her family behind her and her own determination to prove her value, Angela knew she could face any challenge that Street Marys imposed on her. As the bus approached, Angela was ready to face another day. Little did she know that her street presence was about to trigger a series of events that would challenge the foundations of hospital culture, exposing prejudice to many hidden and forcing a late reflection. The following weeks at Street Mary's General Hospital unfolded like a fuse, slowly burning. Each day adding another layer of tension to the already challenging work environment of Angela Parker. The initial coldness she had experienced on the first day had evolved into a more insidious form of exclusion, one that was harder to identify, but impossible to ignore. While Angela performed her morning rounds, she couldn't help but notice the stark difference in how she was treated. Angela was surrounded by an environment that at first seemed welcoming, but quickly turned out to be hostile. Nurses, mostly white and with years of experience, seemed to have a silent pact that excluded the new colleague. As she made her rounds, she watched the interactions between her colleagues, noticing how they joined small groups, laughing and exchanging stories. But whenever she approached, the smiles went out and the conversations diminished. The contrast was glaring, and with every passing day, Angela felt the weight of loneliness accumulating on her shoulders. At a particularly difficult time, while taking care of an elderly patient who was recovering from surgery, one of the most veteran nurses, Clara, entered the room with a disdain expression. "You really need help with it, Angela," Clara asked, her voice loaded with sarcasm. "I think you are still learning how to do it." Angela's heart shot. She knew she was doing a good job, but Clara's words hit her like a blow. "I'm just here to help," Angela replied, trying to stay calm. But at that moment, insecurity and doubt began to erode their confidence. Clara was not shaken. "If you insist on staying, I hope you learn fast. We have standards to keep here." The nurse left, leaving Angela alone with her patient, who watched her with a look of worry. "Are you okay, honey?" the patient asked softly. Angela smiled at her, but the expression of pain on her face was undeniable. "I am, yes. Just a difficult day." The words barely came out of her mouth before she felt her tears threatening to slip down her cheeks. The patient, realizing the tension, held Angela's hand. "You are a good nurse. Don't let anyone say otherwise." These words of support were a small consolation, but as the days turned into weeks, negative interactions became more frequent and more intense. Each look, every whisper, every sharp comment contributed to a growing feeling of inadequacy. Angela began to doubt her own competence, wondering if she actually belonged there. In moments of loneliness, she reflected on her journey. Every time of study, the sacrifices he made, the struggle to stand out at a nursing school where he felt like a stranger. It was as if all this effort is crumbling in the face of its inability to integrate into this new environment. In a particularly frustrating afternoon, Angela met in a restroom shared with other nurses. They were involved in a lively conversation about their personal lives, telling stories about travel and parties. Angela hesitated to join them, but decided it was time to try. "Hi girls, can I join you?" She forced a smile, but the nurses exchanged significant looks before Clara again answers. We're just talking about the best vacation places. It is certainly not the places you usually visit." The followed laugh was deafening and sharp. Angela felt her face burn. Hostility was clear, and with each new interaction, the belief that there was no place there was strengthened. The weeks continued, and Angela found themselves fighting not only against the resistance of her colleagues, but also against her own uncertainties. The pressure to prove its value became increasingly heavy. She struggled to be the best nurse she could, but the constant rejection made her question her ability. During the nights when he came home, Angela sat on the couch, looking at the ceiling as the tears dried down her face. "What am I doing wrong?" she wondered out loud. "Why is it so difficult?" In one of these nights, his best college friend Lisa called. "How are things at work?" Lisa's optimistic tone contrasted the melancholy involving Angela. I feel that I don't belong there. It is as if they are always telling me that I am not good enough." "Don't believe it," Lisa exclaimed, your voice full of passion. "You're amazing, and anyone who doesn't see it is blind. Remember, you're there because you deserve it. You are an exceptional nurse." Lisa's support words brought a thread of light to the darkness that Angela felt. But even so, the internal battle persisted. She was constantly wondering, what if I am not what they expect? What if I fail? Amid this emotional storm, an unexpected moment came. In one shift, Angela came across Thomas Edwards, the patient he had mentioned earlier. He was in his bed recovering from surgery, but what most caught Angela's attention was the insightful gaze he kept on her. As he approached, he smiled. "How are you getting around here?" "I'm fine, thank you," Angela replied, trying to keep the composure. "And you? How is it exempt?" "Better now you are here," he said with a smile. "I saw how you deal with others. You have a special way." The sincerity in Thomas's words made Angela's heart accelerate. "Do you really think this?" "I'm sure," he said, "but don't let others make you feel less than you are. The real strength is to know when to fight and when to get carried away. You can change things here." These words resonated deeply in Angela. She realized that in the fight against prejudice, she was also fighting her own insecurities. What made her unique and special was her strength, determination, and her ability to empathize. Yes, it was a difficult battle, but perhaps she could find unexpected allies and perhaps even gradually change the dynamics of the hospital. As Angela said goodbye to Thomas tonight, she felt a new purpose arising inside her. If the change was what she wanted, then she would need to become the voice that would challenge the system. With this renewed determination, she knew that the way ahead would be arduous, but was willing to fight for every step, not just for herself, but for all those who would come after her. Angela felt that the pressure increased every day. Insecurity was turning into an unbearable weight on his shoulders. Clara's disdain gaze will become a constant shadow in his mind, and every muffled laugh he listened to as he passed through the corridors seemed an echo of his own inadequacy. She struggled to ignore negativity, but it was as if every malicious comment was a sharp knife, cutting deep into each interaction. That week, a new challenge came up. The hospital was facing a wave of patients due to an outbreak of flu. The demands increased dramatically and the shifts became longer and more exhausting. Angela, determined to show her value, offered to cover extra shifts, thinking that this could impress her colleagues. However, what she didn't expect was that this decision would lead her to an emotional collapse. Sleeping nights began to accumulate, and Angela found themselves struggling to maintain mental clarity. During a particularly exhaustive shift, she came across a critical situation. A patient in serious condition needed immediate and effective care. Angela, with her heart rapid, began the procedures she had learned, but the pressure of the situation made her hesitate. When Clara entered the room, the veteran eyes settled in Angela, evaluating her every movement. "Do you really know what you are doing?" Clara questioned, her cold voice like ice. "Or will it end up putting his life at risk?" Doubt infiltrated Angela's mind instantly, which began as an attempt to help quickly and turned into a nightmare. She felt paralyzed, her knowledge and training dissipating under the weight of Clara's gaze. The patient was fainting and time was running out. "Angela, move if! Do something!" Clara shouted, causing Angela's blood to boil. The pressure made her make an error. She confused one of the medicines. As soon as he noticed, panic dominated her. What had she done? What would others think? After the situation is controlled and the patient stabilized, the weight of the error fell on it as a storm. As he walked away from the bed, he felt the guilt and the shame to consume. Clara followed, with a look that mixed contempt and worry. "You really need to start paying attention, Angela. This is not a game." The words resonated in his mind like a warning bell. That night, when he arrived home, Angela collapsed in tears. What should have been a moment of triumph turned into a devastating failure. She remembered Thomas's words, but now they seemed distant and unreal. "What if I'm really not good enough?" she wondered, her heavy heart of doubt. What will lead you to expose yourself in that way? The pressure to fit was becoming unbearable, and each new interaction became a battlefield. In the following days, Angela was isolated even more. Daily routines have become an emotional resistance test. While her colleagues continued to form small groups, she increasingly felt like a spectator in her own life. In the breakfast pause, I was trying to hear the conversations, but the inability to join them made her feel invisible, a shadow wandering down the halls of the hospital. Things got worse when Clara, realizing Angela's weakness, began to use it to her advantage. At a team meeting, Clara brought out Angela's error before everyone. "I believe we should discuss the importance of attention to detail, especially when it comes to human lives." Clara started looking straight at Angela. "We cannot afford to have nurses who make basic errors." Humiliation has hit her as a punch in the stomach. The disapproval's gaze of her colleagues made her feel small, as if she were being naked before them. After the meeting, Angela retired to the bathroom, where she allowed herself to cry in silence. The mirror reflected a woman who no longer recognized. The image of someone who had dreamed of being a nurse, who struggled so much to get there, was now stained by doubt and shame. "What am I doing here?" she whispered to herself, her embargoed voice. "Is it worth fighting for this?" That night, Angela decided that she needed a fresh start. Lisa's words echoed in her mind, and she realized that she needed to move away from the toxic environment and reevaluate her priorities. If you wanted to survive in nursing, you would need to find a way to protect yourself emotionally. Thus, he began writing a diary where he recorded his experiences, fears, and frustrations. This practice became a form of therapy, allowing her to put her thoughts in order, reflect on her actions, and set goals for herself. Meanwhile, his friendship with Lisa became a safe haven. In a telephone conversation, Angela shared her fights. "I feel like I'm failing, Liz. Every day I feel more lost." "You are not failing. You are learning," Lisa responded firmly. "And just because some people don't recognize their value, it doesn't mean you don't have one. You need to find your voice and take a step to impose yourself." The determination in Lisa's words echoed in Angela, and she realized that she needed to fight for herself, not only because she was accepted, but for asserting herself as a nurse. Over the days, Angela began to change her approach. Instead of submitting to silence and humiliation, she began to position herself. During the meetings, he raised his hand to share his ideas, even if his voice trembled. She made a point of asking about the procedures she did not understand, showing the willingness to learn and grow. Although it still faced resistance, something began to change. Her colleagues, realizing her determination, began to look at her differently. Clara, however, was not willing to give up so easily. In a new attempt to undermine Angela's confidence, she began to spread rumors about her ability. "I don't know if Angela is really ready to deal with more complex cases," Clara whispered in a conversation with another nurse. But Angela listened. Angela's heart fired with anger and frustration. How can she do this, he thought, feeling that he was in a constant battle. But instead of being shaken, she decided it was time to confront Clara. In a moment of bravery after a meeting, Angela approached the veteran. "Clara, we need to talk. I don't know what you are trying to do, but I won't be silent. I'm here to learn and grow, and I won't let you stop me." Clara's surprised look disarmed her momentarily, but soon turned into a sarcastic smile. "Do you really think you can intimidate me? You still have a lot to learn, Angela." But Angela was not discouraged. With every word of Clara, she felt the flame of determination to grow inside her. She realized that although the way was difficult, she was not alone. Thomas, the patient who had supported her, was recovering and began to visit her during the shifts, offering words of encouragement and encouragement. He became an unexpected friend, someone who remembered her that her value didn't depend on the approval of others. With the support of Thomas and Lisa's friendship, Angela began to believe that she could overcome the obstacles she faced. She was determined to prove herself not only to her colleagues, but to herself. The internal struggle still persisted, but now instead of feeling defeated, she felt a new force sprout inside her. Each day it was a new chance to get up and fight. And finally Angela understood that true victory was not just to achieve respect for others, but to find respect and self-love on her journey. Angela felt the weight of contempt and insecurity with each passing day. The pressure in the hospital was constant, and Clara's gaze followed like a shadow, always ready to find flaws. When he decided to cover extra shifts during the flu wave, he believed it would help to prove his value. But as sleepless nights accumulated, she was consumed by exhaustion. During a critical shift, when a serious patient needed care, her hesitation led her to make a mistake. Clara's gaze, full of disapproval, disarmed her. For Angela, that moment was the culmination of her insecurities and fears, and humiliation hit her as a storm. That night, alone in his room, Angela allowed himself to cry. The tears ran down as she looked in the mirror, trying to find the woman who dreamed of being one day. Clara's criticism resonated in her mind, and the question, "And if I really don't look good enough?" she consumed her. What seemed like a dream will become a nightmare, and the idea of giving up began to form in his mind. Doubt involved her as a dense mist, obscuring her way. In the following days, Angela was isolated even more. Each interaction at work looked like a battlefield, and she felt more and more as a spectator in her own life. The breakfast break will become a painful reminder of its loneliness. But even when everything seemed lost, friendship with Lisa became a thread of hope. During a conversation, Lisa encouraged not to give up. His friend's words were like a balm in his tormented soul. "You are not failing. You are learning," Lisa said, and for the first time in a long time, Angela began to believe that there may be light at the end of the tunnel. Determined to change, Angela decided that she needed to assert himself. During the meetings, he began to position himself, raising his hand to share his ideas, despite the fear that accompanied her. The resistance of some colleagues was still present, but something inside it began to change. Clara's gaze was still a challenge, but Angela was not shaken. She realized that although the way was difficult, she was not alone. Thomas, a patient she had helped, began to visit her and offer incentive words, becoming an unexpected friend. His presence re-energized her and reminded her that her value did not depend on the approval of others. However, Clara was not willing to give up. During a meeting, the veteran attacked again, spreading rumors about Angela's ability. The humiliation flooded Angela. But instead of letting herself hit, she made a decision. It was time to confront Clara. With a rapid heart, he approached the veteran after the meeting. "Clara, we need to talk. I don't know what you are trying to do, but I won't be silent anymore. I'm here to learn and grow, and I won't let you stop me." Clara's surprised look disarmed her momentarily, but soon turned into a sarcastic smile. "Do you really think you can intimidate me? You still have a lot to learn, Angela." Clara's words were like knives, but Angela felt a spark of determination grow inside her. Yes, she had a lot to learn, but that didn't mean she couldn't fight for her place. With every word of Clara, Angela felt stronger. She realized that despite fear and insecurity, she had the right to be heard. The internal struggle still persisted, but now there was a new strength in your heart. Each day she got up and struggled for herself, not just to gain respect for others, but to assert herself as a nurse. Reflection on her experiences led her to question her beliefs. What was, in fact, success? For Angela, it was not just to conquer the approval of his colleagues, but respect for himself and the ability to get up after each fall. Life lessons began to intertwine on his journey. She learned that true growth comes from overcoming challenges and that each mistake was an opportunity for learning. With the support of Lisa and Thomas, Angela began to see life in another way. She realized that the fight was not just about nursing. It was about meeting and valuing itself in a world that often seemed hostile. Each day was a new chance to get up and fight. True victory was not perfect, but to allow itself to grow and learn. Angela began writing a diary where she recorded her experiences and reflections. This practice has become a form of therapy and self-knowledge. She was beginning to see beauty in small victories and the understanding that she was not alone in her fight. Thomas's support and Lisa's unshakable friendship became pillars on his self-discovery journey. Angela's determination was consolidated, and even in the face of adversity, she decided that she would not let herself down. With each new challenge, she remembered that she was stronger than she imagined. At the end of each day, he reflected on his achievements and learning, and finally began to see the light inside her. Angela's story was not just about personal overcoming, but about building a new identity, where true strength was the courage to get up and fight for itself, even when everything seemed dark. Angela felt that the battle was just beginning. The confrontation with Clara will leave your emotions on the skin. Although he had claimed, the sense of doubt and insecurity still accompanied her. The next day, when preparing for work, he looked again at the mirror. The reflection he saw was that of a certain woman, but the inner voice insisted on questioning her ability. What if Clara is right, I thought. What if I can't? In the hospital, the routine was still passed. Angela struggled to maintain her posture, but every Clara look was still a blow. During the shift exchange, Clara deliberately ignored, and the silence between them seemed to scream. In a moment of fragility, Angela decided that she needed to talk to Lisa. He found his friend in the breakfast, and the two sat at an isolated table. I don't know if I can continue like this, I vented Angela, the trembling voice. I feel that I am always at the mercy of what Clara thinks of me. Lisa looked at her carefully. Angela, you are an amazing nurse. Remember everything you have ever faced. Clara may try to knock you down, but you can't let it define who you are. Lisa's words lit a small flame of hope in Angela, but at the same time, the comparison with the veteran colleague made her distressed. The weight of expectations seemed to be increasingly present. What if I fail again? I can't live with this constant fear. Lisa took a deep breath, reflecting before answering. Failing is part of the process. The important thing is to learn from it. You are not alone in this. We are all here to support you. Angela thanked Lisa, but the insecurity still consumed. Over the weeks, she began to realize that despite her attempts to assert herself, the internal struggle was constant. Every mistake he made, every criticism he received, seemed a reminder of his past failures. During a particularly difficult shift, a patient she took care of had a complication, and Angela felt the pressure increase. He remembered the moments he hesitated, and it left her paralyzed. Clara's memories haunted, and the fear of not being good enough accompanied her again.